Okay, in this video, I'm going to talk to you about performance-based lead routing. So before I even talk about this flow chart in front of us and how this system is going to help you inside of Salesforce, help you close more leads if you go this route, I need to talk to you about what a round robin or the opposite of performance-based would look like. So performance-based, as it sounds, you basically figure out who is my best performing rep at solving this problem and has the highest close rate. That's who I want to assign that lead to because I have a higher chance of closing that deal and getting money from that customer, right? The opposite of that is just making sure everything is fair, which is a pretty typical setup within businesses as well. In that situation, you have something called a round robin. And what that means is you just have a system to where lead one comes in, we're going to assign that to Annie. Lead two comes in, we're going to assign that to John. And then you just cycle between those. So lead three comes back in, that's going back to Annie. Lead four comes in, that goes back to John. So it just goes one for the other every single time. Make sure everybody gets the same fair amount of leads for your business. And it's just basically about fairness, making sure everybody just gets it. And it's kind of just pure luck about which ones you end up getting. Maybe they're all bad, maybe they're all good, maybe it's a mix of the two. But that's the other popular one that I'll see a lot of the time. This is the complete opposite of that. This is trying to look at, hey, we know Annie is really good at solving pain point number one, and we know that John is really good at solving pain point number two. So for our system, we're going to set it up to say, we want to figure out which one they're talking about, and then I'm going to assign that lead to that person because I know Annie, if she gets pain point number one, she's way better at closing that one versus, okay? If you're not interested in that, feel free to leave this video now because that's what we're going to talk about and some of the pros behind that. For the second half of this video, after I get done explaining this flowchart and how it works in Salesforce, I'm going to explain to you some ways you can customize this. So depending on the company size, how many sales reps you have, you might want to do stuff a little bit different. So I'm going to explain how you can customize this to fit a little bit better for your business too. Okay, so let's get started real quick. So the very first step, obviously, is you get some kind of new lead that comes into Salesforce. And what we want to do as step or decision number one is figure out the type, the engagement type of that lead. So how did they find us, essentially? Now, within your marketing, you have something like a funnel, okay? And within that funnel, there's three things. There's top of funnel, middle of funnel, and bottom of funnel. Your top of funnel is really focused on getting people interested and aware of your service or the product that you sell. So you might run ads to these people. You might try to run some webinars to get people interested. You might have some form fills out there on some of these things on like your pages or your blogs talking about at a very high level, this is how this product or service can help you. So if we use my business as an example, I do Salesforce consulting. So my top of funnel is just trying to tell people that there's people out there like me and my business that exist. Hey, you just bought Salesforce. Did you know you can hire consultants like us that come in and we have all this expertise and we can help you set it up and we can give you strategy on how Salesforce will work better for your business. That's a very top of funnel. I'm not getting into anything super deep. I'm just letting them know that there's a solution out there that exists. My middle of funnel is probably more what you're watching right now, to be honest. If you're coming and you're watching these types of videos, you're more middle of the funnel. You know that there's a solution like me that exists, a consultant, and now you're really just trying to build trust with the person that you want to hire to make sure that that's the right fit for you. So you watch videos like this to kind of get more trust out of them, see if they know what they're talking about, see if you like them, if you're going to enjoy working with that company. So that's more of your middle funnel. You probably have like a newsletter in there as well, something that you send people all these tips and tricks, you know, once a week or whatever, once a month, once a day on this email list. That also will build trust. So that's another way of doing it. And then your bottom of funnel, the very last thing is, I've watched a ton of this guy's videos. I've read all his newsletters. I see him post all the time on social media. I know all that stuff. I know that it's an issue. I need to solve it. Now we're talking about, you know, how much is it going to cost? What does the contract look like? What does my onboarding look like with you guys? We're at the very, very bottom where I'm going to buy. I just am determined at this point, is it going to be from you or somebody else? Because I'm fully bought in on the idea that a consultant should come in and help me with my Salesforce. I just want to make sure that you're the best fit for that. So that's what we are kind of determining as level 1. And the way that we do that is because depending on which one they clicked on or how they found us, that'll give us a good indicator on whether they're really cold or they're a lot warmer, right? So that's what we want to do as number 1, is determine that. How did they find us? And you collect that through these things. I won't get too deep in this. This gets way too technical. There's another video I have on this specifically, but you'll collect marketing UTMs. And basically what a UTM is it will tell you when a lead gets into your Salesforce, hey, this is actually from your Facebook ads, or this is from your website. They went to your website, they clicked on something, that's how they found you. Or this is from a webinar that you guys did. They clicked on something on the webinar and we know they came from there. So that will give you that level of awareness to understand where they're at in the buying phase, how we need to kind of treat them and what we probably need to focus on in that call. Level 2 is checking the type of content that we talked about. So going back to this performance, great, we now have an awareness. Annie or John knows how to talk to the people because we've identified that they're either cold or they're hot, depending on the buying in the funnel. Now, number 2 is the pain point. Yes, they came from email and they might be clear at the top of the funnel, in the middle of the funnel, but it's going to be pain point 1, or it's going to be pain point 2 that we talked about that they actually clicked on in the email that made them want to talk to us. Okay, so we probably know that pain point number 2 is going to be the thing that they're most concerned about, and that's what they want to figure out if we can help them with. So let's assign that over to John, okay? So level 2 of this system right here is figuring out the pain point they're going to likely be speaking to you about, so we can assign it again to the best performing sales rep at that stage. Okay, so that's great. We have those 2 things. We collect it. We understand where it's coming from. The next part here is understanding that hot or cold, right? I kind of talked about it up here. We should have some indicators based on where they found us and what they're talking about, but we also want to see the lead score of what this person is. If you haven't set up a lead rating system or a lead scoring system, I have a whole separate video on that on my YouTube channel that you can go and watch. How you set that up in Salesforce, why it's important, how it can best serve you, that kind of stuff. And also the questions you should be asking. So to keep it short and not re-explain that whole video, you're asking questions when they fill out these forms or when they go to your email or etc. You have some kind of questionnaire that has likely asked them like job title, how long they've been at the company, maybe they make the decisions for the team. Do they have approved budget for the team? Those kind of questions. So that way you can kind of determine as well. Now they're talking about pain point 2. They're middle of funnel. They're pretty aware of what's going on. They're ready to buy a solution or getting ready to buy a solution. I also now know this person is the decision maker and they do have the approved budget. So this, in this situation that I'm making up, would be a very hot lead. Like they're ready to buy. They're the person that you got to talk to. There's no one that they have to go around. Great. That's a hot lead. So if that is the situation, a fail safe we want to do here is we also, just because this is performance based, we don't just want to load stuff up on John or Annie and just have 100% of those leads going to them, because depending on how much leads are coming into your business, they just may not have the capacity to even handle it. And so if we just keep assigning these to John, he might not even have the time in the day to even call him. And then that person goes to waste and you don't close it anyway because they go to a competitor. You never reached out. So we do want to have a final fail safe here. This final fail safe will check exactly that. You're going to want to determine how many leads per day these people can handle. And you can get that by understanding with their sales manager or them themselves, the sales rep, if you're at that stage, how long it usually takes them to talk to somebody on the phone or go through emails with them. I would probably base it first on your phone calls. If they're actually going to reach out to these people and call them, how long do those things last? How many calls in a day can you usually take when someone's interested? And then depending on that, you can set a limit within Salesforce to say, okay, hey, this is, a person from email. It's pain point number 2. It's a really hot lead. We want this to go to John in the best case scenario, because he's the guy to solve this problem and close this deal. We got the best chance with John. But hey, I just looked and he actually already has 8 leads that got assigned to him today. So he's at capacity. This is the amount of people he can call today. So the last thing I want to do is assign him another and then just lose this hot lead. So in that situation, yes, he's at capacity. I want to put this in our standard round robin. You still can have this round robin or a queue. This is something we can talk about in the second part of this video of customization, where John's at capacity. We now just want to assign this to another person that can get on the phone and still handle this, right? That way you still have a chance of closing them. If we sign it to John, we just know it's not going to likely close because he's not even going to call him for a day or two. So let's assign this over to Annie so she can at least start speaking to him. And if need be, Annie can always assign it back to John, right? If she feels that that's the better fit later on. But at least somebody's calling them, because at the end of the day, that's what you want to do. You want to call them as soon as that lead comes in for the highest chance of closing to begin with. If he's not at capacity, the obvious answer here is we just assign it to John. Okay, so that's how this system would work. Pretty straightforward. Now, some of the things that I want to speak to on customization, you heard me at the end. Let's kind of go from the bottom here. Another way that you could do this instead of a round robin is there's stuff in Salesforce called a queue. And it's basically exactly like what it sounds. Think of like customer service and tickets that they get. So, you know, if I reach out to whatever, Nike today because I have a complaint, when I go to their website and I send them an email or I try to call them and they can't take my call, there's going to be a ticket that gets created and then it's put in a queue with like the other 500 tickets that they have for the day, right? And then they have, let's say, 300 customer service people. Those people just go to that queue and just pick the one off the top and then assign it to themselves and start working it. I know this because I worked in customer service for a long time before I did Salesforce. And that's what we would have standard as well, right? We'd have this queue, we'd work the queue and just work the tickets. They just get assigned to you. So same idea with, instead of doing a round robin and just jumping back and forth, you could also assign it to a queue so that, hey, here's excess. We've been assigning all these like ones we know that need to go to these people. And until they're at capacity, then we'll start assigning to a queue, which just means it's up for grabs. Just means there's another lead in there. And if John ends up calling those 8 people for the day a lot faster than Annie calls her 8, well, then John's available. He can just jump into that queue, pick the one off the top and start calling them and start working through the queue. So you could also do it that way. And I think that way tends to be the popular route if you have a lot more sales reps. So if the more sales reps you have, the less concerned people are with specifically assigning leads to people, and the more they will lean towards like a queue, kind of like what I said with customer service, where we can just get in there and pick the ones out of there that we want to grab if they're excess. So that's another way that you could do that. Let's see. The other thing that I wanted to mention up here, like I called out, is just kind of going back to this UTM parameter. This really will not work if you are not collecting those UTMs first. You still could try to figure out what pain point they checked, but this whole system right here actually is a system that you need to have in place where you're having Salesforce communicate with what marketing's doing. So if you do not have the UTMs being collected, this is not going to work the way you want it to. You could still, I guess, technically look at just the lead rating, and then if they're hot or cold, assign it to somebody, hey, this person's a good closer, they're a hot lead, go ahead and assign it to this person. But you're not really going to be speaking much to their needs because you won't know it. You won't know that they are interested in solving pain point number 2, and you don't know if they're coming from a webinar, an email, a blog, or a paid ad. You don't know how, aware they are of this problem. So you could be spending a lot of time assigning this hot lead to your best performing rep, when in reality, they're kind of cold because, they're not really aware of the problem yet. And this is the first time they're interacting with you guys. So something to kind of consider there that I also want to call out. Now, if you need this introduced into your company, the way I always pitch our own services, since you're already here, is you should work with a Salesforce admin or somebody in-house. A lot of the times those people will solve problems for you if you know exactly what to do. A consultant on our side, what we would say is something like this. If you're watching this for the first time and you don't really know much about this, or this seems like a cool system to install into your company, but you've never done it before, this is great for like a consulting firm like myself to come in and do, because this is something we do all the time with many different clients across many different companies. So we've seen a lot of what works, what doesn't work, and how to do this very efficiently. And so if that's you, you can click the link below in this description and that'll send you over to a call for us. And then we can chat more about your specific situation and see if we're a good fit and help you implement this system.